Okay, Steve, you were talking about something I knew about but was too busy doing my own TV stuff to participate in. Tell me about the early days of Napster.
It was just such the free island where you could go and anything you were interested in, somebody had contributed from their own collection what they had. So it wasn't just like one person was putting in their favorite song, but there was just so much material, hard to come by, interviews, renditions, I got to a place I would begin to ask for more and more remote bits of information, and let's test this audience and see if we got some references that you haven't heard since you were a kid or something, or maybe didn't even hear at all. Like I was mentioning a while ago, I wanted to hear some Lenny Bruce. Well, there's a few albums out, so I typed in Lenny Bruce, and there were pages and pages of links to so much material that was only available in a few people's private collections. And because they felt they wanted to share and add to the world's collection, they just made it available. There was no profit interest. So much good, free audio material got swept away when Napster was closed down because the royalty issue that was wanted by artists, they deserved that. But as far as having a repository for everybody to throw in whatever they had, that's what really thrilled me. To be able to see how actively people wanted to contribute their knowledge. It wasn't just being harbored by a few people and held tightly because, I have the rare copy. No, it was that here's a place for the world to now have what I had. I've been saving this for the right time, so that when I met the right person who could then make this available to everybody else, well, Napster was that for so many people and for so many lines of inquiry to find answers. Well, it was that hippie ideal, where we're all feeding each other, man, and it was a rush. But the cynical side then said, how long can this good thing last before someone finds some way to mess it up one way or another?
You think it was the artists that messed it up? Because I knew artists that wanted to put their stuff up for free, and they were closed down. There was some young computer types that also were interested in radio, and they had their little radio thing going, and they had all original material. And they had a lot of problems, even though it was all theirs. They weren't, I can't remember.
Well, there's the famous lawsuit of the heavy metal band, and they filed suit, and that they needed the extra money was one side. But on the other side, if the artist wants payment, they deserve it. It's their output,
But there's so many other ways for them to be paid, like with the traffic and, products could be put up. And But I guess the problem is the medium of exchange.
Yeah. Well, and also, we were raised with AM radio, and so you listened to a few commercials, but you never paid for a cent of that music on AM radio, did you?
Right.
I remember when the cassette recorders came out, I remember getting this Concorde recorder. It was a radio and a cassette recorder as one.
And you could record off the radio.
Record directly, and I was recording AM because they didn't even play FM back then. And that was a big issue, where it's one thing to broadcast the tune, and the radio station was paying a few pennies to ASCAP or BMI, whatever was responsible. So there was some transfer of funds for the use of the radio stations. But as a consumer, we never paid anything except for our time listening to the commercials. But now we could tape. We could have all of that broadcast material, not just sent out over the air, but sent out over the air and then recorded for our own delights. And that was going to be the end of the recording industry. But no, I mean, it gave people access to a familiar tune, but it was over the AM radio. You wanted to really hear that tune, you had to go out and buy the album. Then you'd really hear the music. Well, MP3s came out, and I thought it'd be the same kind of deal, where if you would play an MP3, which is so compressed a version from the WAV file or whatever the
analog.
Well, especially analog, but when folks began recording directly onto digital, if you bought the CD, then heard an MP3 of that same tune, well, it was sort of day and night. And I thought, well, people really won't be enjoying MP3s for long. I mean, there's such a loss of vividness in the sound or depth in the sound. How long would people put up with an AM sound now that FM's available? And to me, MP3s were AM compared to a wave being more like FM or just more refined. And I was wrong. People loved MP3s. You could put thousands of them on a small chip. And so for the volume of material you could keep, they were happy to forgo greater fidelity. MP3 was fine for the most part.
Some don't know any better.
That's true. But I've come around. Now, the old story is about beta and VHS. All the engineering types agreed that the beta picture was clearer, brighter, sharper. Sony really had the look. VHS was a sloppier, more muddled experience visually. Except beta could only hold 1 hour, and VHS back then only held 2 hours when they expanded that. And so for the convenience of not having to change tapes if you're watching a movie, you had 2 beta tapes, so you had 1 VHS. Well, the 1 VHS was the winner. Convenience paid out, and the consumer made VHS the market standard for many years until DVDs came in.
Were you ever in a position to make that choice?
My cousins were.
Really?
Yeah, and they showed me beta, and it was a smaller little package. The picture was great. It was really sharp. And then I saw
But you didn't care. You had to get up and change it.
I didn't want to change it. You know, remember back in the day when you had to get up and change the album, turn the album over? That got kind of old. So when 8-tracks came in, it might go clunk in the middle of a tune, but at least you didn't have to change anything.
Whatever happened to no pain, no gain?
No, it was music, man. You wanted to get into your music.
But even if it's lesser quality?
It seems that, a lot of folks can...
Do you think that's really our choice, or we're told that that's our choice? That's what I'm saying. Were you really ever in a position to say, I would rather watch a lower quality VHS and not have to get up and change the tape? Or would I like to have this crystal clear, wonderful quality and change the thing?
In that regard, I'm not an early adopter. I don't drive the market. My cousins were the ones who would jump on the latest technology.
So you're saying you would have gotten up more often for quality?
No, not in the case, because the VHS, it was satisfactory.
It'll do the job.
Yeah, I'm able to make out what the movie is. And movies are 2 hours. The VHS was 2 hours. It seemed to me like, those guys did the thinking about what the product was supposed to do.
Have you heard about movie houses in New York, I think in particular, that show old films? There's people that are just connoisseurs of old films, and they want to see them on the reel-to-reel. They actually want to see the film.
Sure.
And now they're being shut down because if there's a digital version of it, they can't afford whatever the license is to be able to have a movie theater.
Just to get a projectionist to, feed the...
No, they're willing to do that. And they've got the
Oh, yeah?
projectionist. They've got their little economy set, But now they're told that these licenses, because their old film now is now digitized, now they can't do that. You haven't heard any of that in L.A.?
None of that, because what's impressed me with the digitization of the old media is they're able to clean that stuff up. So you're getting pristine images that I would pretty much guarantee nobody in the day they were first released ever saw them like this. All the scratches are removed, all the dust is taken out.
Maybe these are scratch and dust connoisseurs. They want to see. It's back to that thing in the moment that you're talking about, that they actually feel through the film. I mean, these people are, I don't know what you call them, freaks, or they're just into their film, and they really feel that when they hear that little click click noise and all of those things, that's, to them, it connects them to source, I guess you'd say. Maybe.
Yeah, I can. I think about recently, I was with some friends, and this guy had a turntable, and he was putting on vinyl, and I'd say that the hiss and the pop were like old friends, Yeah,
and, kind of mothers at home.
Well, there's a warmth to analog in that way, and that's always the issue, that with digital it's either on or it's off, so sound is edgy, whereas if you're just taking mechanical vibration, you're having arcs of sound, waves of sound, versus on, off, on, off. And if I was blindfolded, could I tell the difference? I wouldn't make a bet that I could, except that there's something...
The whole gestalt, the click-click, and when you said it was familiar?
Yeah, well, if you hear the ratchets being pulled down by a projector, that sound.
Right.
Yeah, and yet that's pertinent to a certain range of generations. And so now we're in a time when I don't think Ariana cares about hearing ratchet sounds, do you, during a movie?
She doesn't even know what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
But maybe there's something else that she would respond to, like getting back to the meditation analogy. If we only use a small percentage of our brain, maybe there's other parts of our brain that really is pulling in information, that it's not just a ratchet sound that could be duplicated if you wanted it digitally, but that ratchet sound represents maybe a presence in the room of another consciousness.
Well, yeah, now that argument I've heard, because before digital, you're dealing with chemical reactions, which is an actual physical experience of light hitting these halides, and so now this little clump of material turns into silver, and there we go. And so you're recording things chemically.
Sorry.
Isn't she handy to have around?
Yes. She's wonderful. She cooked and cleaned.
Oh, you cooked a bit too. Come
bless
on.
Ariana.
Yeah.
No, she really.
Supervised.
Oh.
Yeah, right.
Jumping on it. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I once had a buddy explain to me why, he liked old wine. Because whatever the vibration was taking place that year, all those grapes absorbed the sunlight and the atmosphere that was specific to that exact vintage, and then it's been held in suspension in an alcohol solution, so that if he was tasting a wine out of some year, he was now experiencing chemically a
distillation of the year.
Yeah, or
and the location.
A true record. Yes, time and space was captured and held in amber almost in that bottle.
How beautiful.
Yeah, and it gave me an understanding, why someone would care to have a wine from this year or that year.
Right.
And although it may have been a good year for war, it might have been a bad year for wine, or vice versa. You just don't know how the affairs of humans affected the affairs of grapes.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, that idea of alcohol being an embalming solution for the vibration of a certain season. And then there's the idea of letting the whiskey or whatever hang for decades and to get a 20-year-old bottle of scotch. And so now you're sipping something that, like a crystal, has been absorbing all the energy, has been sitting there, and all of the affairs of man and beast as they roam about the atmosphere. Somehow, that all gets encoded. So that when you're having a sip of that, on some level, you're absorbing all of that. And getting high at the same time. So that, you know, it pays off in so many ways.
Well, speaking of higher consciousness, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi said that there were three most powerful things were mantras, herbs, and gems. Now, when you were talking about the crystal, do you think there's an absorption or the opposite, an emanation of vibration in something like a gem that you would think of, you know, what it's coming from coal and thousands of
absolutely.
How would you use that analogy? Okay, well, the wine would be like a plant, and the distillation would be the alcohol that's produced under certain circumstances, so you capture a moment.
Yeah.
Now, how about something, you know, what's the relation between plants, herbs, and gems?
Vibration. You know, when you think about a gem or a crystal, you're talking about a lattice work of the atoms and the molecules inside there. And so now you have this grid pattern, if you will, moving in several dimensions. And as any vibration passes through that, if someone just makes a sound near that gem or passes light through it, that lattice work will be vibrating with that addition from the outside. And you could be argued that, like once you ring the bell, it never really stops ringing. It's always vibrating quietly in some way. So it's absorbing all the other vibrations that are passing through and then also giving off those vibrations. So it's taking on and giving off. It's constantly it's a feedback loop. Whatever's coming into, if you have a gem on your finger, say, then it's the fact that it's in contact with the warmth of your body, your auric field, and then that stone or what have you is going to be vibrating in concert or maybe not in concert, not in harmony.
But if you were disharmonious, you might want it not to be in harmony, because maybe that, if you were disharmonious, and I don't know, that's not probably the right phrasing.
That's why you try something on and you go, oh, this is not for me. And someone can say, oh, it looks great on you. Yeah, but I don't like wearing it. It didn't feel right.
Yeah, but what if you're going to see a master about something and you've decided that things could be better, and chances are the very habits you have might be the problem. That's why I use the word a master. Somebody that may see that what you don't like might be exactly what you need.
Yeah.
And in which case, then you'd have to, I guess, have the faith that uncomfortable feeling might pass. Like say, saying a mantra. That most people would say that's a very boring thing to do. Why would you want to keep introducing something so repetitive?
The Captain returns.
I was just thinking with the lattice work and so on, like a gemstone on your finger is such a small, little, tiny thing.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, it's said that gems, mantras, and herbs are very powerful. But it seems like some cooperation is also needed, some intention on the side of the person who's wearing it or participating in that science, and a certain responsibility of somebody who's a master of that science to be able to give it out in such a way that it has a soothing and healing effect for the entire environment, not just to please, you know, one little entity here or there.
Yeah, I think your issue of faith, because if you assume a master-disciple relationship, all right, so you're already accepting, you know, the game. This is how the game is going to work. I'm going to come to you with a question, and you're going to give me a response, and then I'm going to judge for myself, or not. I will toss out any notions I have, any preconceptions, any doubts, any reservations. I'll just drop all of that and say, well, because this guy told me, that's what I'm going to do, and we'll see what happens. And I think about when I was growing up, the doctor had a lot of voodoo in our family. If there was a problem, you called the doctor, and tell you, most of the times he knew what to do. Well, of course, we were all children. He was a pediatrician, and there's only so many things that could happen to us he hadn't seen before. So you get in the habit of looking to an older authority who has the knowledge that you don't have, and so he can prescribe the right action, the right pill to take, and lo and behold, you get better. So if, similarly, when it comes time to a spiritual question, something in your soul is feeling off, and you want that house call, you go to the Master with that question, with that yearning, and depending on your level of commitment to the process, and also how much is the Master asking you to surrender, or are you surrendering?
Or maybe not even asking you, it's just how much surrender is necessary for anything to happen.
That's different then. That's if you come to that position where you realize the only reason I'm still stubbing my toe is because I haven't turned away from this wall. I keep walking into this wall and stubbing my toe. And when this guy
Maybe
said,
there's a better way.
Maybe there's a better way, you know. Maybe you can turn around or just change your angle a little bit. But you may have gotten kind of used to stubbing your toe, or you like the view of that wall up close.
It's familiar.
It is.
Sigmund Freud said the repetition compulsion was even greater than the pleasure principle. People would rather do what's familiar, even
than face the unknown.
Even more than what's pleasurable.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, who can't experience that as being the truth? Because in a way, we're all sort of looking for that most familiar thing, which is, you know, the true home from where we came, the grand light from which we're all splinters. And so we are trying to recede back into our egg phase. And so going back has a certain appeal. But, you know, bring up Einstein, there's the notion that if you head off in this direction long enough, you'll come back to this place, because it's always just looping back. And so if you're going to a master or going to any kind of course of development, there seems to be, along with that, the understanding that, A, you're already there, and you're just going through this dance just to keep yourself occupied in the meantime. But B, also that you are headed for something that is where you left. What's that phrase about, you know, we come back around and find ourselves where we started for the first time?
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in a position where surrendering is the best way to give into the current and let nature sweep you along, fine. There was a time when I thought, no, you swim against the current. That's what makes you stronger. And all of humanity is just going the way of the unthinking mob, and this herd mentality is taking us all down the river of ignorance. And so it's for those who want to swim to the shore and stand up and walk upright. That's what you want to do, and you can exhaust yourself in the process, but it's for a good cause in the long run. It might be true, just in some
Well,
cases.
that's more of a martial arts one, but let me finish what you're saying and I'll...
No, it's true, but it's also a sense of finding your individuality. When I was a teenager and began driving, well, you wanted to drive fast. Because everyone else is driving so slowly, you can just, you know, get past all of them and get where you want to go quicker. But after a while, you attract the wrong kind of attention doing that. And enough driving school expenses and legal fees. You know, why am I banging my head so hard? Why am I stubbing my toe over and over again?
But just a second, in a place like Germany, you can go as fast as you want. You don't get tickets. Do you think that teenagers in Germany naturally slow down, other than being arrested and stopped and all of that?
Oh, well, talking to friends who live over there, there's a lot more training. So you don't just turn a certain age and jump into a car and go 120. No, there are a lot more. They require a lot more from their drivers when it comes to actually how to handle a high-speed vehicle. And it really, as they say, it's not as fast as you can go, but as fast as you can say is conscientious.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt your flow, though. You were talking about you're young, you're going fast, and then pretty soon...
Yeah, and so there comes a point you go, you know what? I don't have to be the fastest person on the road anymore. My favorite story was a buddy who was in traffic school that's being led by a CHP, a California Highway Patrolman. And someone asked him, there's times on the freeway when everyone's going 80 miles an hour. So everyone's breaking the speed limit. How do you decide who to pull over? And the cop said, there's always a volunteer. And so if everyone's going 80, some clown's going 90. Because he wants to be the fastest thing on the street. That used to be me. Now, not so much. Now there is a value of going with that flow, or maybe helping it to flow a bit more freely. But to be the fastest person out there, to be the one who attracts the attention of the authorities, I don't quite feel the draw like I used to.
Yeah.
I surrender.
but you never know. Maybe it's, it's kind of a toss-up. It just depends how important is getting there fast versus something else that might be going on. Joe always says, if you're going to break a rule, be careful about which rule you're breaking.
Yeah. There's that Dylan line.
Don't be holding and speeding. See what I mean?
Right. No, if you're to live outside the law, you must be honest.
Yes. Yeah, he quotes that often.
Yeah, and so it's what's the intention? And gosh, when you're 16, 17, your intention is just to spend more hormones on something.
Yeah, but getting back though, going against the flow, what if things are flowing in a direction that it does seem the whole herd is going off the cliff, and they're going to go off the cliff anyway, and you just don't want to go off the cliff?
Yeah.
Then going against the flow might not be so unwise.
I agree.
Even though you're not going to have a lot of company.
And that can be okay,
Or
the same way there are people who held on to their vinyl and their turntables when everybody was saying, oh man, that went out with a horse and buggy. And in time, well, how about with film cameras? I got some great 35 millimeter cameras. I have a nice Hasselblad. I mean, when I finally got those cameras, I was proud to own those things. I mean,
right.
They took the Hasselblad to the moon, and
that's what they said.
And so I still got a box full of equipment.
Well, that's nice. You're very faithful to that. So you're going to be a record keeper of sorts, because you really see when these different epics come and go. There's always something of an epic that went.
Yeah.
That you still didn't really completely recreate in the new epic. You only approximated it. So when you meet somebody who was a master of that epic, which I would consider you with your Hasselblads, that there'll be some young person that you'll show it to, and they'll see this isn't like digital. There is something different to it.
Yeah. But good luck trying to find a laboratory in the future that will process the film. I feel there'll be a couple of labs that will take stuff in the future. The same way you can still find people that make horseshoes. Not every town doesn't have a blacksmith the way we used to. And I can still see, because there is something about film. I had a dark room when I was growing up, and that magic.
Right.
Of putting this
and
into a bucket of that,
and then the fixer,
and the stop bath, and the fixer,
yeah.
And
the smells,
and you would watch the thing appear on a piece of paper.
I know. Nothing like it.
Nothing, and it really was to be an alchemist.
Yeah.
But now the fact that you can just press a button and record sound and picture, and then you can upload it, and then it's just in the ethers, as long as the servers are about their business.
But there you go. As long as the servers are about their business, I've begun to realize how incredibly volatile the internet is.
Oh,
and the censorship, just with a little click of a mouse pad, you can wipe out files. You couldn't do that with libraries as easily. I'm looking on libraries and I'm seeing
Yeah.
you do see that history is often, well, maybe it's almost not even the exception but the rule. It's written by the victor, so you're only going to get one side of the story.
Oh yeah, you think about the Great Library of Alexandria, where the amassed knowledge of all civilizations to that point swept away by a flame. I think about it's the science fiction notion of a giant electromagnetic pulse. Say the sun gives off some kind of rare flare, and it sends a pulse of highly ionized material that just hits every magnetic recording device and totally cleans the slate like a major magnet.
Wow.
And then suddenly our civilization is tossed back into the 17th century because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't know how to begin to churn butter.
Yeah.
I
couldn't make a bicycle.
Yeah, you think about like even when our extender went down. Downstairs, we need an extender to get a clear signal for our Wi-Fi. And every so often, something happens with the Wi-Fi, and the extender has to be rebooted. And for a couple of days before I finally get around to it, it's like, my Wi-Fi's not working. And you feel like, I'm melting. I'm dissolving as a human being. I can't get access to everything I want all the time. And that's the new addiction. It's just the assumption that all of everything will be available right there.
I know.
And
you get cranky when it's not.
Cranky. You get cranky.
Yeah. Or how about people getting directions from those little GPSs?
Oh, man,
do you realize if somebody could throw a real monkey wrench in and give, instead of an invader with an atomic bomb, they could just go in and start screwing up directions.
Oh yeah, it's like all these cars, all these red lights will hit, and the brakes will stop, cars will be spinning around. Where am I? I think about this job I do, where I'm given a location. I go to the location, I photograph the location, and then I put the information onto a form, pictures, and I send the form back to a company. Back in the day, that was done with a camera that you developed the pictures, you waited the 3 to 5 days, whatever, photos came back. You would cut those pictures and you would paste them physically onto a form. You would then mail that form in, snail mail. Now, even the directions how to find that location. When computers came along, you could map quest. There's a verb that came and went in a few months. You could map quest that location. I'd have a book with all my maps printed out. Now there's no paper at all. The address goes onto a file on the phone. The map is found on the phone. The picture, everything is just zip, zip, zip. No paper, sent instantly. It's wonderful.
And as soon as that file, though, if anything goes away to your address book, you're lost.
Yeah.
Like I'm starting to train myself to actually punch in numbers so I remember them in case anything happens. Like when I want to serve something, send a file into Manhattan Neighborhood Network, it's 206.71.245.114. Now in the past I would just say, I can't be bothered with that. But as I study more about IP addresses, and I'm, because I'm a real community broadband activist, that's my thing, and avoiding the theft of intellectual property. I realized by memorizing it and actually typing it in every time, I feel safer. Because if I'm always copying and pasting it,
yeah, you're relying upon the system entirely.
Yeah. Then if it's not there, I can't.
Yeah, I used to pride myself on remembering phone numbers.
Uh-huh.
And
but now you don't have to punch them in.
No, I think I have a few friends who every year will print out their phone book, just have a hard copy on file.
But they're more the exception than the rule.
Yeah, by far. Because where's the direction? Everything is now towards the cloud.
Yeah.
You don't need any more external battery memory because it's all going to be cloud-based. And again, that's going to be the great sweep of the herd, will be cloud everything, which in some regards speaks well for our society, that we can handle the concept of all this activity, all of this personal human effort, and it's just being sent up somewhere in the vapors. And we're okay with that we don't have to have the physical manifestation of all of that attention, but we can deal with something as simple as just knowing that it's there. There's the new faith, really, that without having something in your hand, you can just have the thought of knowing that it's safely stored. Well, you think about this film, you upload it. Which server, holds this data?
Right.
How long will it be there? Will a person 100 years from now have access to this information? We just shrug and say, whatever. Because something new is coming along. 10 years from now will be a whole different way of looking at things.
But some things will be the same, won't they? I mean, some things never change.
Yeah, well,
like mantras, herbs, and gems. Will that still be the case or not? Because we always hear this is eternal knowledge.
Yeah. And
so,
why should that not be available for experience? Salt will taste salty. So we allow that. And you can take certain materials and manipulate them accordingly, and you can store all kinds of information on their circuits.
Well, when you say salt will taste salty, will we have certain electrodes that will stimulate us so that we taste a salty taste? Are we becoming more etheric as we're moving into the cloud and all of that?
That's fair. I mean, it's fair to assume there are people who will pursue that. I think about the early days of thinking how to colonize Mars or the moon.
With humans.
Yeah, and that human beings will get tired of the same flavor. No matter how delicious, you have it over and over again. That's where repetition falls apart. I mean, the senses want to be stimulated with something fresh on occasion. So maybe rather than sending them an extra spice rack, you can just jack something into their head and go, too salty.
I guess what the problem is who's jacking that into your head, because you'd like to think you're sovereign. And if you're vulnerable, like, for example, I love the idea of the cloud and community sharing and what you said about Lenny Bruce. And, when people put up things close to their heart, you feel the enthusiasm, like you're not that type of connoisseur, but you're really glad somebody else was out there. Because now all of a sudden, in a really quick, succinct way, they can kind of take you into their heart, really.
That it was
into
done
what they
so
love.
quickly.
And it's not about money.
No, that it was really the purest altruism. That here was a chance for everyone to put their say onto the table.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the marketplace.
Right.
It's that you put yours up, I'll put mine up. And I can have a sample of what you think is cool. And if you want to try my action, here's, the...
It's like play. It's like being a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's new. And
it took my breath away to see that everything was available. Old recordings, lectures, poets, as well as hard-to-find music.
Yeah.
That people, again, like people are proud of their wine cellar. That, look, from the 1800s, I have this brandy, and what that means to them. And likewise, you could go on to Nabster and just see so much of everything. The nearest thing now is Wikipedia, where you try to find some obscure topic, and you check it up, and somebody spent the time and trouble to write about it. Now, true or false, accurate or not, the system purifies its own system.
we hope. Otherwise, if special interests control it, then that what you're talking about, the early days, it was so early.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been a fake Lenny Bruce. You could just feel the authenticity of some of these rare things. You weren't suspicious of it. Now, oftentimes, I've had imposters, I've had all kinds of uncomfortable things on the internet, and you always try. To me, meditation is about that, coming back to that innocent and enthusiastic and place of confidence, that you know who you are independent of all the environment, and then you come from that place to give your gifts and take your gifts, but when it starts getting layered over and you start to depend, say, on what viewers are saying, as opposed, like say the Lenny Bruce, you could get a real high looking at all this stuff you didn't know about, because you're fast-tracked into somebody else's experience and love and cultivation of their art form, and they took you there for some moments. Now, if you get to be kind of a junkie at it, where you're depending on that, then you cease to know what your tastes are and who you are.
Well, I always like the way you, I'm didn't mean to interrupt you, but I always like the way you, termed your operation the rabbit hole. And that's what, the near infinite choice of universes are, the cloud represents. In that if you want to investigate the world of blue toenails, well, you can have at it. And you can dive away and you can dig through all these nooks and crannies and go do your fullest investigation to your heart's content and spend all that time, if you so choose and have the access. And that in the end, all of our endeavors are nothing but rabbit holes. And you hope that you're picking some that, have more carrots along the way.
I guess the cynical part of me sees that so many rabbit holes have been deflected to take you into another rabbit hole that seems pretty mainstream, and it's about buying a product.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I feel most bitter and most ripped off, and that's when I most need to meditate. To just remember that, okay, they couldn't resist the temptation of stealing, and they stole. Now what do we do about it? Because I think all of that, what you're talking about, the beginnings of Nabster and so on, the more I studied law, the more I realized the real purpose of the study of law is that journey out of Egypt. It's always about freedom, and it's about and if you're not free, who is it that's enslaved you, and can you face your accuser? Because somebody who's purporting that you owe a debt to them, they should be able to present themselves and give all the evidence that they've been harmed by you. And otherwise, there's been some big deception going on. And if you were faithful enough to the law, you would be able to figure that out. And you could make your journey into freedom, so that we can, all those things you're talking about, Nabster and things, I'm feeling we can have that. It isn't something we have to mourn the loss of. And that young people can be even freer than we were. Even though right now, it seems all we hear about is war, and everybody's on their little iPads, and they're all being profiled, and my sister says she hates Facebook and always has. But you can begin to see, well, here's a useful technology, and why is it souring people? Maybe it's not the Technology. Maybe we don't understand who we are, and we're not commanding it.
I have to agree absolutely. If you had a telephone to call everybody on the planet, and so you start calling, some of those phone calls will be pleasant, and some will be with people you don't enjoy talking to. It's just the luck of the draw. It's the odds. Statistically, so much of what's out there will be satisfying to us, and so much won't be. So many people are looking to make profit, and some are just looking to make a contribution.
Is it 50-50?
No.
What do you think
But,
it is?
well, profit motive is a pretty powerful motive. But I still like the idea that, better to light a candle than curse the darkness. And I think that when you hear about a site, well, like you hear about Kickstarter. Now, who knows how long this will be around. But here's a function where people have an idea, are looking to receive financial support from the out there. And so you stick up your little note saying, what do you think about this idea? Is that worth $5 or $500, whatever? And you put it out there. And people respond or don't respond, and you move on accordingly. I don't know what the business model is for the folks who are standing behind the service. But it seems like it's allowing people to have access. The captain has
captain. For people to have access?
Yeah, I mean, you're providing the opportunities. And for the people who can use this tool for good, good. And for those who want to use it to manipulate, take advantage of others, hey.
Right. Well, speaking of those that take advantage to others, since I've had so much traffic stolen from me, and I've had some of my work taken down saying that it was copyright infringement when there was no question it was mine. The show that I did with you and Mike, how do you pronounce his name?
Dago,
I think was so incredibly good. It was done in July of 2008, a couple months after I was on Howard Stern. And I can't remember when we did the one with Warren Cucurullo, but the one with Warren Cucurullo had so many thousands and thousands of hits. But believe it or not, this one with Mike Dago was disabled, and I don't know how long it's been disabled.
Really? Yeah.
But you can, when you pull it up, you wrote such a beautiful email to me about my mother's death, and I wanted to share that on Facebook, but I wanted people to have an idea of who you were, and who my mother was. And I remembered this conversation we had with you and Mike and my mother in her front breakfast room, and also how much my mother liked it, because she asked me for a DVD copy, which in those days I didn't have a computer that could just punch out a DVD copy, so I had to exert myself to transfer the file to make my mother the DVD.
Right.
So that means she must have really pushed for it. So when I was searching around on the internet, I was surprised that on my YouTube channel, where I have 1,000 videos, I can no longer do a search of only my videos. So the search I have to do has to be with all of YouTube. And I didn't remember how to spell his name and so on. So I don't know, finally I found it. And then when I found it, it would play through, you would look at it and it would go right to the end. And it would give you all those choices. And then I realized because I was opening up different tabs, maybe a few minutes later, the audio would start, but it still looked like it was finished. Then after the whole hour, because it was an hour interview, then the video would come up. Now, fortunately, I had the DVD copy, but my point is, it's got less than 400 hits, but content-wise, I think it could have been hotter than the one with Warren Cucurullo. The topics that we went over, and my mother's participation, so you could see that it went intergenerational. You really ought to take a look at it again. It was just excellent.
Good.
And the points that Mike brought up, he was talking about, he had a DUB, and I didn't know what DWB.
Yeah.
And I said, what is that? And he goes, driving while black. And my mother was so savvy to that. And this is before I even understood about the incarceration and so on. And then you were talking about the 3 strikes law, and I interrupted you because I didn't understand the significance of that.
Yeah, and you see now that's being undone. That it was seen to be a smart move at the time, and the excesses of that approach, and the inflexibility it gave to individuals to work with the legal system. That's being replaced now. They're taking the harshness out of that.
Can you explain it? Because for viewers who might see this overseas.
Oh, well, if you had 2 felonies, well, each of those felonies you would be sentenced according to the jurisdiction and discretion of the court. If you had a 3rd felony, that was like the 3rd strike in baseball, you're out. They thought, well, if you've had 3 felonies, you're a hardened criminal, so you're going to have to really face the music now. The judge would not be able to make any determination on their own. They would have to say, well, the law says I got to send you away for all this time. The 3rd felony could have been a relatively minor infraction. Relatively. You didn't shoot anybody. Okay, maybe you were caught holding a certain weight in drugs. Non-violent crime. But
we're talking about a corporate court system, because felony by the Constitution means a heinous crime.
What kind of?
A heinous crime.
Heinous?
Heinous, yeah.
What is that word?
Heinous is something so awful, so dreadful.
Oh, heinous.
Heinous, yeah.
Heinous, okay, yeah.
Something so bad.
Beyond the pale.
Yeah, and yet you're saying, oh, it could be a minor felony. It kind of is a...
It's a funny idea, but, okay, if I show up with a gun and start shooting people versus, oh, I have an ounce of weed on me.
A little vegetable matter.
Yeah, something that grows in the ground, and I happen to grab a bag full of it, for whatever purposes. By the 3 strikes law, those 2 crimes were viewed in the same light. Oh, 3rd strike. Didn't matter if you were stabbing people or just carrying around this plant. You're going to go away now. And it was just very harsh. It was a boon to the incarceration corporation. Apparently the union for jail guards and prison help, that's a pretty strong outfit. But now, for being the land of the free, we have more of our population locked up than anybody else. I don't consider that a great achievement of a civilized society.
So you're implying, though, that others also don't consider that a great achievement, and therefore we're moving on and getting rid of the 3 strikes?
We're loosening up the 3 strikes, as I understand it. I'm no expert, but from what I've read. But I think America, viewed from the outside, is seen to be, in many ways, quite leaden, feet in cement kind of thing when it comes to any kind of progressive thoughts. I know people are having them, people who are in the rehabilitation business. Everyone's trying to have their say. And there was a time in the 60s and 70s when revolutionary thought was encouraged, but it was taken to an excess, and the pendulum swung the other way, where it became draconian and inflexible and by the book. And it doesn't speak well for the creative soul that we spring from.
Do you mean we spring from as Americans? Because in our last minutes, would you want the world to think that Americans...
Dogs.
We made friends
That
with
Americans...
all those Pomeranians. We stuck her in there
Oh,
with her.
nice.
Yeah, we just stuck him in the pen and they all were together.
They get a little doggy chat.
Yeah.
Doggy chat. Very nice.
But our dog doesn't think it's a dog. Doesn't like to be in such a thing.
No.
Thea's putting them in the palms.
Oh.
Those are Thea's playmates.
They're big.
Oh, well, they have that one now. Yeah. Then the 3 palms.
And now the challenge really kicks in.
Yeah, those are Thea's playmates.
Oh.
The little one's, not the big one. That one's too big. And it's kind of blind, so.
Oh, kind of blind. That's nice.
Here we are at a nice RV park in Red Bluff, California. And that was where my grandmother spent most of her time and where my mother was born and where we're going to have the service for her tomorrow at Sacred Hearts Church.
Well, that's what I'm asking you for the same reason. I'm going to hike around a little bit. I'm going to see what the action... Actually, I should head off and get my hotel.
Oh, there's another dog. Big girl, yeah.
So here I am in Red Bluff, California, getting ready to mail my new proof of service. I'm now up to about 30 people. And this is the post office I used to go to when I was a kid. It's right here on Walnut Street. And down there's the railroad tracks. And here we are coming into the U.S. Post Office. And here is all of my handiwork. And you'll see John DeCaro at Shapiro, DeCaro and Barak. Donna Corbial, she's at the Berkeley Public Library. Alden James, National Arts Club, Robert Schockenbach Foundation, President of the Players Club, Frank D. Vance. He's the Comptroller of the Currency, Disclosure Services, Federal Communications Commission, Mr. Johnson at the Public Utilities Commission, Norman Goodman, who's a county recorder, Phil Allen is on the board at the Berkeley Community Media Center, Terry McGregor is at Elmwood Nursing. I learned a lot of law by watching what was happening in the nursing homes. Phyllis Anderson is the head of the Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary. She's been there for 35 years. I've heard wonderful things about how the churches are going to go more into justice and social advocacy. Jennifer Eckert, of course, is the law firm that I'm mostly suing, but I'm not going to stop there. Donna Albano is the court attorney for Justice Doris Lynn Cohen, whose claim to fame is marrying the first gay couple. Okay, Karen Fleming McDowell at the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is about the second time I got an actual signature. The other one was from Renelle Randolph over here, but I decided each one of them needs to get their own copy. Primitivo Suarez Wolf is the one that was on the public notice about remodeling that's going to be done on the tower behind the Berkeley Police Department. And I'm very interested in getting a Freedom Tower because we're all about community-owned bandwidth. Irma Davis Smith is at AT&T. I happened to accidentally get her name. I apologized to her about that and said nobody can be fired for denying somebody their rights. Vincent DeVito, he is on the board at my co-op, and this whole thing started with my keys, my locks being changed when I was in India in 2004. And I thought I had a mere trespass, got the lawsuit in before the statute of limitations, before the tort would expire in 6 years, and that was before I realized that there was bank fraud. I'm self-taught. This is going also to Gramercy Park. It's not really the owner's corporation. I should cross that out. I'm going to be sending this to the super and then asking the super to deliver it to Vincent DeVito. And again, this starts to empower the common people.